Hello and welcome to the Walk in Love podcast. I am TJ, and this is where it would say I'm Brooke, but Brooke is not here today. A lot of tenderness in the voice this week, and so I am writing solo, at least for the intro. But then last week I got to record my friend, Dr. Josh Straub. You've heard us talk about Dr. Josh on the podcast many, many times. This conversation that we have is just loaded with incredible wisdom and insight from Josh. So I definitely recommend that even though Brooke, the better half, is not here, that you still listen in, because I think it's a lot of great stuff that Dr. Josh has to say. The collection is also live. So we have a few more days left to shop the summer collection. And we just appreciate all of you that do shop that. We always say that we don't do ads on the podcast and we don't do sponsored posts because you guys shop from the collection so well. So we ask that you would support us that way if the podcast adds any value to your life in any way. So yeah, we really appreciate that. And as a special bonus to you as a podcast listener, we have a special code for you. The code is butt clench, which the messages that you guys send us, like of a screenshot, like saying how excited you were to use that code, are just like top notch. We love them. Yeah, butt clench is the code, BUTTCLENCH, all one word, obviously. And if you listen to last week's episode, you obviously know why. If you are like, why are these weirdos making this code? Go back and listen to the last episode. But without further ado, the recording is pre-recorded, so I'm just going to say thank you for listening. Thank you for making this part of your week, and enjoy this interview with Dr. Josh Straub. All right, so today we are talking to my good friend, Dr. Josh Straub. Straub.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I probably should know how to say your last name. But I met Josh through a men's group that we're in called Integrated, and he has so many accomplishments, but I'm just going to list my friendship accomplishments with him because, like, reading the bio is kind of, I don't know. You've heard your bio enough times. So Josh has added an extraordinary amount of value to Brooke and I's life without even realizing it, just by some small tidbit course correction things he's shared at this group Integrated. And we've talked about him here. One that we talk about quite often is the chair behind. Brooke and I use that language all the time in discussion and communication. And then the other is the 15-minute check-in at the end of the day, which has been super valuable to Brooke and I as we learn how to love each other well. Josh and his wife, Christi, just wrote a book called Famous at Home, which I absolutely 100% recommend. I'm about this much through. It's one of those books where I feel like as I read it, I'm like, okay, I can't just bulldoze through it. I have to actually think about it. And so that's why I'm only this far through, because after every chapter, I'm like, okay, I can't just go on to the next. I really have to think about what that means for me and my family. So Josh, thank you for being with us, with me. Brooke had voice surgery. We were unsure how strong her voice would be for the podcast. Luckily, it's been strengthened, but I was like in sort of panic mode on who I could interview, and you were the first person I wanted to interview. So thank you for being here.
Well, that is a massive honor. So thank you. Thank you for, the way you've championed us, and the message that we believe God's put on our heart to promote, and it means a lot. And I'm so grateful that you and Brooke have been seen the fruit of some of those things. So it's just an honor to be with you.
So why don't you just tell people, like, I've talked about you on the podcast before. I call you Dr. Josh, and I tell everyone that he prefers Dr. Josh, which is a total lie. You just want to be called Josh. But true. Tell people, like, give some people maybe like a more traditional background on like your qualifications and kind of what you do for a living, because I just talk about you as a friend. And so I don't necessarily include all the like fancy, like I don't have any fancy words after my name. Like it's just, hey, it's TJ, the walk and love guy, but you have, some more fancy terms.
Well, and I'm just Josh, the famous at home guy. So at least that's at the end of life. What I hope my family is saying about me is that I was famous at home. which is what my wife and I, Christy, and I do. We have a podcast called Famous at Home, and we're both trained counselors by trade. We kind of got out of doing the counseling thing a number of years ago as we started really identifying in our own family. And a lot of this is you've read in the book, like a lot of our brokenness came in our early years of our marriage, not anything marriage related. It was like we were fine. It was that our greatest opponent came into our marriage weighing 8 pounds and 1 ounce. Like our babies were very difficult. We struggled mightily in those early years. And having a PhD, I love research. I love studying research. And we were struggling in those early years, and I wanted to go back and find like, what is it that really matters as it relates to like how we raise our kids? Like at the end of life, like if I'm a grandparent, I'm sitting in my rocking chair, I'm looking back through the decades, like what will have really mattered? Is it, did I spank or not spank? Did I, do a time in or a time out? Did I breastfeed or not me breastfeeding, but my wife breastfeeding or bottle feeding? Are we co-sleeping? Like all of these things that we worry about as parents. And everything that I found at the end of the day came back to this idea of emotional safety in the home, and just this idea that every major outcome we desire, our children getting married, staying married, and loving their marriage, getting good grades, having a career that they love, having a faith that sticks, every single one of these things linked back to that idea. And so it just started changing the way that we started helping families. In that process, I have a crisis response background, and we were getting a lot of phone calls of leaders in crisis. And so we started looking at like, as parents, whether we're leaders, whoever we are, we all have this chase. We all have this thing that gives us a dopamine bump in our brain, likes and followers on Facebook, Instagram, like all these things, like, your fans, whatever it is, you have a thing that gives you a dopamine bump that's sitting and playing shoots and ladders with an opponent that has no idea which way is up and which way is down. That doesn't have the same effect, right? It's like, so what we end up doing is we end up prioritizing, we give our best outside the home and we give the rest inside the home. And this whole emotional safety thing, linking that. So I do a lot of it in emotional intelligence stuff and emotional safety stuff with organizations, military, and that type of thing, especially when we're not physically present as often. And just this idea of how do we create the quality of the home? What does that look like when we prioritize and we're famous at home so that we can step out into the world and allow God to really use our platform in a way that serves him and builds his kingdom?
Well, I think that was worth the 10 minutes or 5 minutes right there. You brought more heat than it takes Brooke and I an hour to do. So that was awesome. And I think like, one thing I so appreciate about you is like, you deliver this, like, because it's intense, like emotional safety, emotional well-being. That's like an intense topic. It's a topic that I feel like is hard to talk about. Like, it's almost like you even need permission to talk about the hard topic. And I feel like what you've done with the book and what you do when you teach it integrated is you deliver it in a way that is very easy to digest. And so our audience comes to Brooke and I mostly for laughs, like mostly just to like, I don't know. I feel like we're pretty casual.
That's what I come to you for as my friend, because I tend to take life too seriously. And you are I need TJ. I need more of TJ in my life. That's what I do. I need to move to Hawaii.
Well, I've been trying to convince you to come visit, so that offer is still 100% on the table. We got plenty of room.
We're ready.
Your kids would love it.
Once my 2-year-old's a little bit, we're coming.
Once they can watch a full movie like on an airplane, then you're like, I can travel anywhere. But it's like that in between where you're like, oh no. And so I think what we like, our audience oftentimes is like, how do I do this? How do I like create a space of emotional safety for my kids? Or like, we have like a wide variety of listeners. We'll have singles and married, no kids, and married with kids. And so I would love to hear like, how do we as parents or as future parents do this well from the beginning? Because like we struggled with this and I've read the parts of your book, like your babies were a lot harder than mine. Like we've had one hard baby. It seems like you've had all of them. And so
Yeah.
I understand that, just
yeah.
like a little glimpse of that, where Sunny was our challenging one and still actually remains our passionate one. But like, how do we do this well from the start? What are some like just practical, and that's what you're so good at, is just giving like practical tips on how to do this well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're about to have, you're about to have, you're married and you're about to have children, but you don't have children yet, or you have children, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to us. I can sum up all of parenting research into one primary conclusion, and you'll have to wait to the end of the episode. That way we know that you're listening to the entire episode for me to say it. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that to you. You can sum up all parenting research into one primary conclusion, and that's that our kids become who we are. Our kids become who we are. So I was just at an event the other night for our church, and it was a group of us, kind of marriage leaders within our church. They were going around introducing themselves. And it was so fascinating to me because these are marriage leaders who have lived 20, 30, 40 years of marriage really well. Sometimes it wasn't well. They had issues going on. Some of them were restored marriages, that type of thing. But it was fascinating to hear people say that their adult children, like how much they admire. There was one woman in particular. She's like, my husband is the closest thing to Jesus I've ever met on this earth. And I was like, just to hear her honor him the way she did publicly. But then she said, and my kids are like him. And I was like, that's what the research shows, is that our kids become who we are. And so we don't like the word parenting as much as we like the word becoming, to describe what it means to raise children. And I'll say this, if you're single or you're married and you don't have kids yet, I don't know that there's anything, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, I don't know there's anything to prepare you for kids, like other than taking care of yourself, because you just don't know until you're in it what it is you're experiencing. And I will say this too, marital satisfaction, I was just talking to a couple about this yesterday, marital satisfaction dips the lowest, like it is the least. Your marital satisfaction in the first 8 years of life for your kids. Like when your kids are in those first 8 years, that's when marital satisfaction dips the least. So that's when marriage trouble tends to hit, right? And so just keeping in mind, like you and your spouse are your greatest teammates. You're not each other's enemy. There are opponents. That's why I prefaced in the beginning, like our greatest opponent came into our marriage weighing 8 pounds and 1 ounce. Where we struggled was we made each other out to be the opponent. And when you're lacking sleep and all that other stuff, that's where you can get sideways. And so what we have found to be the number one most practical thing you can do is just really find what it is to take care of yourself, to show up as the best version of you. And this is decision one in the book. And it's, for me, I realize like when I wake up in the morning, I have to work out. So I wake up now at like 5:30 in the morning, depending on the day, and I will do a workout, and then I will spend time with Jesus before anybody's out of bed. Because what was happening is when I would wake up at the same time as the kids, I felt like I was behind. And even in my tone of voice towards Christi or my tone of voice towards the kids, I was not showing up well in the atmosphere of my home. I wasn't creating an atmosphere of love and abundance. It was more of a poverty mindset because I didn't have enough time already to start the day. For Christi, she decided. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel that, just like, unfortunately, my kids are early risers. They get up at the butt crack of dawn. And so it definitely takes like an extra, even more effort, which I'm just like, just sleep in. Like, it's so great. I wish I could do it. But I agree with that. And something that Brooke and I have talked about this year specifically is like hobbies, and finding hobbies that you're passionate about, and not hobbies that you want to share and get famous for, but just like hobbies that you like genuinely, like we call it loss of time joy. And what I've noticed is like, for me, that's been painting this year. And it, like the outcome of it has been like, it's shocking to me. Like, I'm just like, how is this? Like, this is not advanced. This is like, I'm just having fun. I'm just creating. And like Brooke, and Brooke, like, and I like sharing about things. So I'll post photos and stuff like that. Brooke is like on the other side. She's like, if I never had to share again, I wouldn't. But hers is like, she's making bracelets. And so when we sit and watch TV at night, or just are sitting after the kids are in bed, she's making bracelets, and just these two like small, what you would seem insignificant hobbies have just like filled us with life. And I find myself with just a little bit more patience, just a little bit more understanding, just a little bit more tenderness, and, you know, towards my girls. And I just like, I, you know, sort of mirror what you're saying, that it's just like, it's kind of incredible. And I think that there's like a cultural, like self-care, you know, like lay around at the beach, which I don't know if that's necessarily what we're talking about, but I think, you know, it's just this idea of like being healthy and not like being selfish. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about it.
And what we find too, you guys are perfect examples of this. I mean, I remember when you started painting, and just seeing you do it is just, and that's everything. And I think what you're talking about is creating habits, you know?
Yeah.
True soul rest is, and we know this through integrated, just the whole idea of Sabbath and Shabbat. Like, you want to find ways that you can truly have soul rest throughout your days, you know, and it might look like a hobby. It might look like getting up early. You know, for Christi, she started, and by the way, so now I implemented this one thing in my life that has become a habit. So now I change how I show up as a better version of me. It just is always evolving. It's always creating new rhythms into who I'm becoming, because I want to become, as I said earlier, our kids become who we are. They need to see us growing. You know, for Christi, it was as simple as she just, you know, when she doesn't feel good about how she looks, she projects that onto me. And so, you know, she just said, I just don't, and you know how it's hard to like say, Christi, should you be eating that, as her husband, right? So that doesn't always go well. So
is that not a good thing?
I don't think so. At least it wasn't for me.
Every now and then I'll joke with Brooke and I'll be like, is that what you're going to wear? Just...
Yeah,
it's always funny to me. It only lands about 40% of the time.
Same with me too. And that's funny, because I know you and I love doing that, talking about that. I just ways that we try to get our wives to laugh that they don't find so appreciative.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, they just don't land. But for Christi, like, she just decided one day, she's like, I just don't want to eat any more sugar. And it was an easy, like, if you see me eating sugar, you have permission to tell me to stop eating sugar, or ask me, should I be, like, so it was an easy black and white, like, I can actually do that. I had her permission, and she stopped eating sugar, and it changed how she saw herself, because, you know, so find what it is that works for you to show up as the best version of you. The other thing that I would say about this is this. Find your trigger. We all have a frustration tolerance in our lives, and it can, like the other night. So we have a 2-year-old who isn't feeling well, and he was up through the night, and he got to a point where, and I have a pretty long fuse. Christi will admit that her fuse is a little bit shorter. I have a pretty long fuse. So I know that when my fuse is out, it's not good. Like, that's what Christi says. She's like, if your fuse is out, it's not good. It was the middle of the night. He was awake, and it wasn't that he wasn't feeling well. He got defiant. Like, he wanted to watch. He wanted milk. He wanted crackers. He was wanting everything except to sleep, and screaming to the top. And I just was like, I had to take him in, wake up Christi, and be like, I'm done. Like, and I think it's important to know, even if you don't have kids yet, where is your frustration tolerance level? What is sending you over the edge? Because you need to identify what sends you over the edge now, so that you can start putting rhythms in your life to help you build your frustration tolerance over time. Because the more people you add into your household over time, like, it's just, you just have to be aware of it. It's emotional awareness for ourselves is what it is.
Yeah. Like, for us, for Brooke specifically, it's like getting out the door, and, you know, like the you know, with little kids, it's just like shoes, you know, sandals, like, you know, let's just go. We want to go. Everyone's excited to go, but it takes forever. And so her thing is, I'm not in a hurry. Like, she has to tell herself that over and over and over again. I'm not in a hurry. For me, it's like anything with cooking food for the kids. It's just like, I would be like a DoorDash parent if Brooke didn't exist because it's just like not my thing. And so, but I just have to
Yeah.
remind myself, like, you gotta feed them, like, and knowing that that's
Yep.
a trigger point for me, I can kind of like, tense up, but if I know, I'm just like, okay, I just need to relax and talk myself through this. I'm like labor breathing while making chicken nuggets, and people might not think it's a big deal. Some people like food is no big deal, but like, it's weird. It's just like there are different things for us that, send
yep.
us into like a, tense.
Yep. And that, and what's, that's where you make your loved one the opponent, is when you are overwhelmed. A lot of times what ends up happening is you'll take a small passive aggressive comment or something they didn't do that you expected them to do. I have a friend who tells us, they lead one of our Leaders Heart cohorts with us. She'll always say this. She said, expectation is premeditated resentment. And it's like, okay, if I have an expectation of Christi and she didn't meet it and I didn't identify it, it's going to come out in resentment at some point. Like, it's just the reality of it. And I think if we're not doing well, or we haven't identified what our triggers are, or we haven't built strategies into creating, for me, like, I mean, an example of that, I'm the same way with you with food. It's like, do our kids ever not eat? It's like constant, like it's mind boggling to me. It's either snack time, breakfast, lunchtime, snack time, dinner time, middle day snack time. I'm just like, it's bedtime snack. I'm like, do you kids not ever, like, what the world? And so for me, I'm like, I'm finding ways, because I know that it's coming, I can change how I show up in those situations, and also not feel like I'm putting the burden constantly on Christi to do it, but that I'm coming around her, I'm supporting her. And so now we'll cook together, we'll do dinner time together. We have a family rhythm where we're, the kids are even putting the meal together. They're finding their own recipes. So our two oldest are old enough now where they can join in that. And so we're creating family dynamics around meals, around stressful events, where it's like, okay, let's do this as a family and make it fun rather than stressful.
Yeah. And for the food thing, like, it's such a silly example, but like now, we do Friday night family dinner, Saturday's our Sabbath, and Sunday we call is like set up for success Sunday. And it's like, if we miss a Sunday of grocery shopping or Costco or whatever, we feel that later in the week. And so, like, back to your point about habits just being so important.
So good.
And just like that rhythmic living of family, like, I'm not as stressed making lunch for the girls if we grocery shop and plan well on Sunday. And so, it's just like, it's so crazy how it just like, you see these tiny little decisions. And that's one thing that I really loved about the book is like, and Brooke and I ended up having this long, intense conversation. So thank you for that. About,
I tend to do that.
Like,
for you
guys, talk about your what? Yes, it's amazing. And I love it. Like, I say that sarcastically, but I really like, it's so strengthening to our marriage. And we've figured out a way to talk about hard things without talking harshly.
That's good.
And that's been
good.
really beneficial. And so,
so good.
The one part of the book is like, where's your pain point? Like, and you talk about that. And for us, I was like, all right, here's where I think it is. And for us, it was like, I felt like I wasn't stepping up as a leader because I was always concerned of like, well, that makes like, we're in this, you said it, the first 8 years of kids, our oldest is 7, of just like, how do we, and we work for ourselves. So I'm here all day. How do we balance this? Where Brooke is good at what she does. She wants to do what she does, but her time is also taken by the girls more than mine is. I'm getting this satisfaction from creating and planning and doing all this. And so we had this really great sort of intense conversation about like, how do we balance this? And how do we find where we are best at while also, because we want to homeschool our kids. Like, we have some like real things that we want to do with our family. And so I would love to hear like any sort of advice on like, so what you have these pain points, and for ours, it's that, how do we balance work? How do you get to work while also raising a family? And we just have different responsibilities and different, in this early young kid life. I would love to hear, you talk about sort of the pain point process and what that looks like, or what that may look like for people because I think a lot of people just avoid it and we just like shove it down as far as it can go. And then explosion, in extreme frustration. Like, how do you avoid that? And how do you talk about pain points in a healthy way? Would be, I think, super beneficial to our audience.
And I'm really grateful you asked that question, because I wanted to go there, like in the sense of like, the reason we do what we do is, yes, there's practical things here, but our heart is for people to go deeper. Our heart is for people to not live like on an emotional intimacy scale in your marriage. You don't want to just live a humdrum kind of 6 out of 10 marriage.
Right.
You want to live at an 8, 9, and 10, and really be connected and feel like you're championing one another. And so I'm glad you asked that question, because I think we avoid it because of shame. I think we avoid the pain points. I know me as a man, like everything you said, I resonate with. We work together, we homeschool, we're home together, like we work for ourselves, like all of those things, our lives are very similar. And so when a pain point comes up, when Christi brings a pain point up, there are times I take it, even though I'm Dr. Josh, this is why I'm just Josh. I take it as a personal attack, because I'm like, oh, I'm not living up to being a great husband or being a great dad when Christi brings up a pain point. And so I try to avoid it because of shame, right? And so but you have to recognize that you do that. You have to be able to have conversation around, I feel ashamed right now that I haven't been leading well, and this is why I'm avoiding this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of times that comes up because Christi's like, we still haven't talked about this. Like, this is, and I'm going, yeah, this is why we haven't talked about it, because I am identifying, but we can't, we have to be able to, and you talked about this in the beginning, you have to learn to develop emotional vocabulary. You have to be able to develop, and that's why we wrote What Am I Feeling, which is a kid's book for kids, even with a pull-up feelings chart for kids to identify and look at, here's what I'm feeling today. Because in a busy Western society that's driven on success, built on success and the next thing and the immediate, we don't take time to process emotion. And God didn't design us that way. He designed us to be able to look at our emotion, because that's our here and now experience. We're experiencing emotion in the moment. And if we can't identify that, we don't really write a great story in our lives, or it'll eventually catch up to us. Proverbs 16:32 says, patience is better than power, and controlling one's emotions than capturing a city. Well, you can capture a city, but if you can't control your emotions or identify them, they control you, and you'll lose the city. You'll lose the business. You'll lose your family. You've got to be able to identify and label emotion in order to survive. And that's why I tell military a lot, a lot of these men that I get to have the privilege of training, their job is to capture or kill. Like they train all day, every day to capture or kill. And the very thing they're trained off to survive on the battlefield is the very thing they have to learn how to turn back on to survive when they get back home. Right. Which is why this idea of emotions and emotion language and emotional intelligence resonates with them, is because they want to be leaders at home too. And so for all of us to be able to, and we do this with our kids, you can do this with your spouse, you can do this with a friend, is rather than doing a high and a low for the day, sit down to the dinner table and identify one positive emotion that you felt. What was I joyful, happy, content, excited, glad? What positive emotion did I feel? And then one uncomfortable emotion that you felt that day. So what was one, maybe anxious or rejected or jealous? Identify and label that emotion with your family or with your spouse and tell the story behind it. Because what it'll eventually do is it'll help you see into the heart of your spouse. It'll help you to see into the heart of your kids. And it gives you context for when they do hit a trigger or their frustration tolerance goes off. You're not overreacting to their reaction. Instead, you're responding to their reaction because you are calm enough to be able to enter into their world, because you already have an idea of what might be going on in their inner world.
Yeah. And, we've talked about this before, because, you gave that talk at First Integrated 15 minutes at the end of the day with your spouse. Brooke and I do a pretty good job of doing that daily. And I'll say this, at first it is painful. Like, it is not a,
yes, that's a good point.
Like,
thank you for saying
not that it's hard, but it's like, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Everything is Disneyland to me. Like, it is fun and happy. And so, like, what's your most positive emotion of the day? Pfft, easy. I could talk about that all day. That's no problem. What's your most
Hey,
negative emotion? I'm just like, I could feel myself like, just like, like I couldn't even look. I remember like the first couple of times we did it, because I came up with an integrated and I was like, this is the one thing I want to do because I know I need to do it. And I could feel myself just like physically like closing off. I couldn't even look at her. I'm like, we've been married. We've been through so much together. And this is hard for me. And I was like, to me, it was just like a light bulb moment of like, wow. Like, because I wasn't mirrored this. Like, I have great parents. My parents did an excellent job, but they did not talk. We did not talk about emotions growing up. And so,
and most parents didn't. Most of our parents didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't have language for it. Like nobody.
Yeah.
In so many homes, and not to blame them for that. They weren't trained how to do it. They
Right.
weren't raised in homes that did that. In fact, they were raised by parents who grew up during the Great Depression. Like, it was all about survival. It wasn't about how you felt.
Yeah.
It just wasn't an option. And so, I think what you said is so important. By the way, as you were talking there, I had to mute myself because as you were talking about being an Enneagram 7 and positive emotions, the ice cream truck was coming by our house, just blaring the music just so loud. I'm like, oh my goodness, ice cream. But what you said is important because it will feel awkward at first, especially if you've never had the chance to do it. And it may even be worth having the conversation with one another about, what did you learn about emotions growing up? What is it about the way that you don't share? Because then you have insight into why the other person maybe isn't feeling comfortable with it. But then also even having the conversation of going, hey, I want to understand in your world, when do you feel unsafe with me? And when do you feel safe with me? What is it that I do that makes you feel safe? And what is it that I do that makes you feel unsafe emotionally? Because even having those conversations, now you're starting to go, okay, but you have to listen. This is James 1:19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. I think those are the most two sanctifying marital verses in all of Scripture. But I just start there, just start having a conversation on emotions, and then realize, like, this isn't you sitting down across from the table and just looking each other in the eye and saying, how are you feeling? Like, Christi and I do this while we're unloading the dishwasher. We do this while we're cooking. We do this. You don't have to make it awkward. And the more you practice, the easier it'll get.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it has become part of just our life, like, we can tell.
I'm so glad to hear that, TJ.
Like, how's your, like, for us, it's like, how's your day going? And that question isn't just like, oh, it's good. How's yours? Like, we know that what that question is asking. And I remember this specific moment early on when we started to do this, where I was like, this is it. This is like, it was like that light bulb, like, here it is. Brooke told me she felt regret. And I was like, I've never heard, we had been married for, I don't know, 9 years at that point, and I'd never heard her say that word. And I was just like, okay, there's a part of my wife's heart that I have not ever heard, that I've not ever accessed.
Wow.
And it was like this convicting, powerful moment of like, what else have I missed? Like, not like regret is sad. There's hurt there. And so, like, I want to comfort her in that hurt, but I also, like, okay, if I'm missing that, there are other parts of this heart that I am missing. And so it gives us the opportunity to explore each other's hearts. And then, and while we're doing that, we become one. We're becoming one more. And so that when trials come, when voice surgeries come, when those things come, we now have this foundation of, like, we are safe in each other's hearts because we have explored. And we, like, I feel like, we moved to Maui and we don't really know the island very well. And so, like, as we explore, we'll know this beach is safe. This one's not. Don't go in the water when you see that because you will get crushed by a wave. And it's like that question has allowed us to do that emotionally. And I'm just forever grateful for you for that. Just like that tip, because it's just been, for us.
Well, and kudos to you, because her ability to say that she felt regret meant that you were safe for her, and you're just continuing to build that safety. So, I mean, it's just, and that's what it's all about. I mean, and imagine your kids, your girls watching how safe you feel with one another, how safe that makes them feel. It's just, you're creating the atmosphere. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, thanks to you. I mean, I just can't thank you enough. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because you have just been such a blessing to us. And I want our audience to know you and to find you and to be able to listen and consume the stuff that you're creating, because it's been just invaluable to us. So I told you I'd take 30 minutes. So we're out of time. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And I will when you come visit us and stay with us in Maui. But
we will.
Do it.
We're here.
I'm just going to start texting you like flight links, Google flight links. Like,
we're there.
There's a nonstop. It's cheap.
I just want to.
So where can people find you? Where can people find you? What can people like? You've got the book, which I totally recommend. You got the podcast. Give people the spiel. Where can they find you?
I mean, famousathome.com is where you can link to all of the stuff, the book, the podcast, everything like that. And then I'm on Instagram. My wife's on Instagram as Joshua Straub or Christi Straub. And then we also have the Famous at Home Instagram as well. That's where we tend to be. But yeah, famousathome.com.
Yeah. And if you're an organization, like, do you also do like organizational leadership? So like if someone is listening and they have like a big organization, can they reach out to you for that kind of stuff as well?
So I do a lot. So in fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be flying, doing some work with Chick-fil-A. In fact, for the next couple of weeks, I've got some Chick-fil-A stuff. So I do a lot of work with Chick-fil-A. I do a lot of work with Joint Special Operations Command in the military. So there's a number of different organizations and things even here locally where I'll go in and just talk to teams about emotional intelligence and how to create that atmosphere where you're really championing your team well. One thing I love about Chick-fil-A is one of the things they say is we serve chicken, but we're in the business of people. And so they just really honor their people and their team members and how they build how they build their organizational structure and the culture, which is so huge. And so we also do that as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And there's one coming to Maui. It's getting built and I see it every day and I'm ready. People ask what we miss most. And it's like, I miss my family and I miss Chick-fil-A.
And then miss Chick-fil-A.
And I'm not sure which order they're in right now.
I was just going to
depends
ask
on the day.
Question. Are you which order are they in? That's it.
When I'm in charge of lunch, there's definitely one that is higher up.
Well, here's the good news.
Thank you so much.
The good news is your grocery day is on Sunday, so you don't have to worry that Chick-fil-A once it's open, you won't get sidetracked. You'll be able to get your groceries and then you'll have your week all set in place. Yeah,
we'll be able. Well, Josh, thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it. If you love what Josh is saying, buy his book, go listen to his podcast. Like, he's just incredible. His wife's incredible. And yeah, we just really, really thank you.
Thank you.
I think All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making us a part of your week. Okay. I love you. Bye.